Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. Today's video, I wanted to complete a series that I started a while ago, actually, and I haven't gone to it for a long time, but I had one more decade to cover, and I did my top 10 favorite movies, and I started from the 2010s and then went downwards. Last one I did was 1940s, so this is my last video on the series, which is my top 10 favorite movies of the 1930s decade. So it's been a long time coming. I've had so many other projects going on that I haven't gone back to this, but I felt like today was a good day to finish this series finally. And I have a playlist on my channel, in fact, that you can go to see the other decades I have. And just a side note, when I get these notebooks that look like this, and I fill it in with my rankings and lists and stuff like that, and different ideas I have for the YouTube channel. I currently have 5 of these right now, because I keep filling up one and then I have to buy another one to fill up notes anyways. And so I currently have 5 of them that I've been filling up. This is the very first book that I got, and I'm down to, after I do a video, I usually throw that paper away. So it's easier for me to find my ideas because sometimes I have to go through these books trying to find, where did I do that one ranking or list or whatever, or album review or whatever. But yeah, I have 1 page left on this one. This is the first book. So this is my last page left on the top movies of the 1930s. So once I get that, I can finally do away with this first book and don't have to come back to it. And so anyways, just side note, good to get that one done, move on with my other pages anyways. But yeah, none of that, enough of that. Let's get to my top 10 movies of the 1930s. Hello, hope everybody's doing well here on a Sunday afternoon. A good day, I don't have to go to work, so it's always nice on Sundays after church just getting to sit at home and relax. And of course, want to do a video since I have the day off. And I was thinking about what video should I do. I have so many videos I want to do. But yeah, like I said in my intro, definitely wanted to finish up this series of my top 10 movies from each decade. And this is the earliest decade that I can do it from. I have watched a fair amount of 1930s movies. I don't watch anything before this really because I'm not into silent movies. And 1930s even has some silent movies into it. So this is definitely like the earliest I can go where I can still enjoy a movie anyway. So definitely when you get further back, like in this period, there's less movies that I enjoy. The older the movies are, it's harder to make, movies that still they get outdated pretty quickly, in other words. And it's hard to stay the test of time. But there are some really good ones here that I really want to recommend to anybody that doesn't watch movies from this period or think 1930s, that's so a long time ago, it's too old. I would recommend these 10 movies I'm going to talk about to give a try, because I think there are some really good stuff, some hidden gems even in this decade. To give some honorable mentions, I'll just go through them real quickly, that didn't make my top 10, but I think are recommendable films. First we got Ninotchka, really good romantic comedy from 1939. Ruggles of Red Gap, another really good comedy with Charles Laughton from like 35 or so. Definitely one to check out. The Thin Man, the whole Thin Man series, I'm a big fan of the Thin Man series. In fact, I have one on my top 10. There's 6 Thin Man movies starting from like 1936 or 34, I can't remember, on to the 40s. Anyways, and it's a fun series with William Powell and Myrna Loy. Comedy / murder mystery movies that I recommend. I got Of Mice and Men, a classic adaptation of that. Came out in 1939. It's a pretty good adaptation of that famous book. Mutiny on the Bounty, another, I think, adaptation of a famous book that won Best Picture in 1935 with Clark Gable and Charles Lawton. I'm a big fan of Charles Lawton. I have a lot of his films here. He was in Ruggles Red Gap, and I have him here in a couple other movies. He's a really good actor from this period. And of course, Clark Gable is one of the greats as well. Snow White and Seven Dwarfs didn't make him a top 10, which might be surprising. I think that's a decent movie. Obviously groundbreaking for the time period. First animated movie, feature film, from Walt Disney. Definitely one to, you need to check out, or definitely one to note from this period. It's very important. I got Boys Town, which came out, I think, in 37, 38. I think maybe 38. Kind of based on, anyway, not a true story, but of a real place in Nebraska where they bring in boys that come from troubled families or neighborhoods or whatever, and they kind of try to, raise them up to be good citizens. Spencer Tracy wins the second Oscar in a row for this film, so it's definitely, and what's his name? Mickey Rooney is the young Mickey Rooney here. That's also pretty good, so definitely one to check out. Bringing Up Baby, I didn't put in my top 10, but it's a really good comedy with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. Definitely one to check out. It's very silly, but very good. Cary Grant's so good. He's one of my favorite actors too from this period. Definitely one of his best films, I think. One worth definitely checking out. And then we got the Private Life of Henry VIII is my last movie on my honorable mentions. It's a movie starring Charles Lawton. In fact, Charles Lawton won the Oscar for Best Actor for this role, and I think it's from 1933, I believe. And Charles Lawton won the Oscar. It's another, actually, it's Henry VIII, famous actor, but it's a kind of a comedic, somewhat more comedic tale of Henry VIII, anyways, and kind of talking about his love life, basically, all the women that he married. Of course, he married a bunch of women, killed most of them too, but anyways. Another one that's worth watching, I think. So we'll get to my top 10 movies of this period. At number 10, and I got a lot of Frank Capra. Frank Capra is my favorite director from this time period. And so I got 4 of his movies on here. And at number 10, I got a Frank Capra movie, which is You Can't Take It With You, which won Best Picture in 1938, and also won Frank Capra's 3rd Oscar. He won 3 Oscars in like 5 years. He was, to me, by far the best director of the 30s period. I do love a great Frank Capra film. They're always feel-good movies, and the character's always very likable. Anyways, but yeah, it's a fun movie about kind of a eccentric family, and the grandpa who's kind of the patriarch, and the whole family's kind of eccentric, but the granddaughter is dating this guy played by Jimmy Stewart, who's wealthy, and he's the son of a guy who owns a big company. And it's about the difference of the families, one's kind of the straight-laced rich family, one's a very eccentric kind of poor family, I guess. It's a very fun movie. And just a side note, I actually acted in this play in high school. We did a play. We did this play, You Can't Take It With You, my junior year in high school. And I played Mr. Depin, one of the characters, a smaller character, but actually a very funny character. So I was really glad I got to play that character on stage. And so it's definitely a movie that, I have a nostalgia for, because I got to play one of the characters on stage at my high school. Anyway, so there's something there. But yeah, it's another just, movie about, money isn't everything, I guess, is kind of the whole theme of it. But yeah. Another good Frank Capra film here, number 10. Number 9 is a film called Libeled Lady. Probably never heard of, but it was nominated for Best Picture in around 38, 37. And it was nominated for Best Picture. That's why I watched it. And I was blown by, I said I was kind of blown away, because it was like, wow, this was a really good romantic comedy. It had some of my favorite actors in it. William Powell and Myrna Loy are in this one too. They make so many movies together during this period, and they have such great chemistry. William Powell's the lead here, and I really love William Powell. He's so funny, and it's kind of him as a journalist who's who's kind of going undercover, pretending to be somebody else he's not, and trying to get the scoop on this woman played by Myrna Loy. I think he's going through maybe a divorce, or not. I don't know if it's maybe she's getting married. I can't remember. Something's going on with her. Anyways, and but it's a really good comedy, I think. And I love those two together. Also, Spencer Tracy plays a supporting role here, and he's really good. So I definitely, it's one you definitely, I think, need to check out. Really good hidden gem here, Live Old Lady at number 9. Number 8 is a very big movie, another big Frank Capra movie, and this is It Happened One Night, which won Best Picture in 1934 and won Frank Capra's first Oscar for Best Director. Also won the Big Five. The first movie to win the Big Five, won Best Director, Best Actor for Clark Gable, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Picture. Very rare thing to do to win all 5. Again, just a classic romantic comedy. Clark Gable's so good here. Definitely one of his best roles. It's got some great, great scenes. The Walls of Jericho. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The hitchhiking scene is great. It's one where, again, he's a journalist. Clark Gable's a journalist who's got the scoop on this woman from this rich family who's supposed to get married, but she's on the run because she doesn't want to marry this guy or something. And so he kind of goes along with her to get this good scoop on this story. And of course they fall in love. It's the same kind of story, but done very well. It Happened One Night. Just a nice romantic comedy. Number 7 is a very classic book and done very well. A very good adaptation. That is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It came out in 1939. 1939 was, of course, the biggest year of movies of all time. I had some of the big classics coming out of that year, and I have some of them here. But Hunchback of Notre Dame this is a great adaptation, and it's from 1939. It's so good, and the reason why it's so good is Charles Laughton. Again, Charles Laughton is so good in this period, and he plays Quasimodo, and man, his performance is so good. The makeup's actually pretty darn good for 1939. They really changed him, make him look like a hunchback, Quasimodo. But yeah, his performance, oh my gosh, I remember watching this first time and just being, mesmerized by his performance. It's like, man, he was really into this character, totally loses himself into the character. And Charles Laughton's not a good looking guy, so it fits really well that he plays this character is supposed to be kind of ugly. No offense to Charles Laughton, it's just the way he is. He wasn't a handsome leading man, but he was so good that he was the lead in a lot of movies because he was such a good actor. And this is one of those cases. Also, it's like the first movie of, I think, what's her name? Catherine O'Hara, who's really good also. Young Catherine O'Hara, who's very, very pretty, playing Esmeralda anyways. But yeah, this is a really good version of the movie. I love the very end. I think it's one of the best endings with Quasimodo looking at one of the gargoyle statues and saying, "Why was I not made of stone like thee?" Meaning he wished he didn't have feelings. He wished he didn't have emotions. Because he wished he couldn't have his heart broken like a gargoyle statue. Such a heartbreaking scene to end the movie, and why I love the movie so much. But anyways, number 7, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Number 6 is a movie called Captains Courageous, which I talked about. Boys Town was the second movie that Spencer Tracy won his Best Actor for. He won his first one for Captains Courageous, which I think came out, I want to say this, or no, yeah, I think this was his first one. It came out in 37, I think. He won back-to-back Oscars for Best Actor in this time period, the first male to do it. And it's a really cool story. It's really about this boy who's from a rich family who, like, I forget if he falls off the yacht or he jumps off the yacht, and he gets picked up by this fishing boat of this guy, played by Spencer Tracy, who's a Puerto Rican fisherman, which, of course, Spencer Tracy's not Puerto Rican, so he has this kind of fake Puerto Rican accent and pretends to be Puerto Rican, which obviously today standards, you shouldn't do that. But back then he did that anyways. But he is very good in it, and the reason why he won the Oscar for Best Actor. But it's all about, this rich boy who's spoiled brat, who then, he's on this boat, but he has to be with these rough fishermen. And so they force him to, work and help out with, and he's not used to working at all because he's rich and not used to doing, hard labor. So he kind of learns a lot of life lessons on the way, and he becomes very good friends and becomes kind of like Spencer Tracy becomes like a father figure to this kid, and they kind of form this really strong relationship. And he really kind of teaches him life lessons to the point where he doesn't want to leave at the end to go back to his real family. And it's a really good movie. Some really good, I think, like I said, some good story points about the kid, and and like I said, him learning to be honest and hardworking is good stuff. So it's some good stuff there, I think. Some good morals to be taught children. Anyways, and like I said, Spence Tracy's so good, and it's really, if you haven't seen it, I think really one to check out. Captain's Courageous, number 6 on my list. Number 5, I talked about this series already, but I have Another Thin Man, which is the second of the Thin Man series. The first one, and they all have Thin Man in the name, basically, which is kind of a weird title. It kind of stems from the first movie. There's a guy, I think they call him the Thin Man, and that's a whole murder case is about this thin man or something. And so they just went with that title for each, even though this has nothing to do with Thin Man, or no one's called a Thin Man. But it's just kind of the title they kind of just went on for 6 movies. And this is the second one. I think it's much better than the first one. I think it's really funny, really good funny moments between William Powell and Myrna Loy. What's so good is he's visiting Myrna Loy's character's family, and Myrna Loy, who plays Nora in the movie, I should say, and William Powell's Nick. Anyways, and Nora comes from a rich family, and so Nick is visiting Nora's rich family with her, and they don't like him because he's, doesn't come from a rich family, so they look down on him. So he hates the in-laws, and so a lot of comedy comes from him having to be at this fancy mansion and dinner, and him has this very sarcastic wit about him, and he makes fun of them. And a lot of comedy comes from that. And of course, someone gets murdered, and then he kind of doesn't really want to be involved because he's kind of a retired, famous detective. But of course, because he's a famous detective, he kind of gets involved in the murder mystery, especially because it deals with his wife's family. And you also have a young Jimmy Stewart here, one of his first films that he did before he really blew up. And a couple of years later, he really blew up as one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. Anyways, but at this point, he still was somewhat of an unknown. But it's really cool seeing Jimmy Stewart in a smaller role here. But yeah, definitely, if you're going to check out Thin Man movies, this is definitely, I would recommend watching this one first. This was definitely one of the better Thin Man movies anyways. So Another Thin Man, number 5. Number 4 is a movie that's going to surprise probably a lot of people. It's not one you probably ever heard of, though it did win Best Picture, and that is The Life of Emile Zola, which won Best Picture in 37, I believe it was. And yeah, so it won Best Picture, but it's not one anybody ever talks about. To me, it's a bit of a underrated movie. Paul Mooney plays the main character. And if you don't know Paul Mooney, he was one of the best actors of the 1930s period. He actually won an Oscar a year before this, I believe, for a movie called The Story of Louis Pasteur. He won Best Actor Oscar, but he was nominated many times. He was one of the most nominated actors at that time and after. And probably one of the actors no one talks about who's really good, Paul Mooney. Anyways, I think this is his best performance, playing Emile Zola, which is a real life character. He was like a French author, I believe. Who wrote these books about poor people or something. Anyways, and he was poor himself, but then he got, rich from writing these books. Really good author, I guess, of this time period. But the most interesting part of the movie is there's this whole trial sequence where a French soldier, and this is based off, this is a real guy, this really happened, French soldier who was Jewish, gets the army basically accuses him of something he didn't do and puts him in jail. Anyways, and it deals with anti-Semitism and stuff like that. And Emile Zola sees the injustice and tries to help him out, like as his lawyer. He's not a lawyer, he's an author, but yeah, he helps him out kind of as a lawyer, I guess. And so he, so this whole trial sequence where he's trying to help this guy out from what happened to him. It's a really good court scene. He has a really good speech here. Anyways, and eventually he does get free, and that's a really great moment in the movie. Spoilers for the movie. This French who's wrongly arrested and everything. So there's a really good feel-good moment there and all that. And like I said, I love a good courtroom drama, so I love the courtroom stuff here. And again, Paul Mooney's so good. Again, it's just a hidden gem movie. One Best Picture, no one talks about it. But yeah, Life of Emile Zola, I think definitely one to check out. All right, now I'm getting to my top 3 favorite movies from 1930s. And I have Blu-rays of all 3, so that's how much I like these. So number 3 on my list, another Frank Capra movie. And this is Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, which I got the Blu-ray, really cool Blu-ray here. Starring Gary Cooper and Jean Arthur, you can see there. This is actually the oldest movie I have on Blu-ray. This came out, I believe, in 36. Yeah, 1936. I talked about Frank Capra. He won 3 Oscars for Best Director. He won the second Oscar for this movie. Didn't win Best Picture, it was nominated, but Frank Capra won his second Oscar anyways for Best Director. It's another just really good romantic comedy, I would say. Gary Cooper, so good in the lead, playing Mr. Deeds, who, the whole story, if you don't know, he's kind of like this regular guy from like the Midwest, I want to say, or from the South. And he has like a great uncle who dies and who was really rich, and he didn't really know his uncle, but he's the next of kin, I guess. So he gets inherited all of the money and his mansion and his business. And so these people come and get him, and he kind of goes and to live at this mansion. I forget, in New York or something. And it's kind of this, fish out of water, he's kind of from, he's got this, poor country backyard, kind of background. He's just a regular guy, very patriotic, kind of Boy Scout leader type guy. And so he's given all this money and all this, and he's kind of doesn't really fit in with the rich society, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of comedy comes from that, and how he's a very humble guy. He's a very nice guy. And that's what I love about Frank Capra movies. The lead character is always very likable. And it's the same in this one. And what I like about this movie so much is that he doesn't care about money. He's not greedy at all. He has all this money, and he's like, why would someone need all this money? Which is very funny, because everybody's like, I would love to have that much money. And so everybody's kind of out to get him because they think he's stupid. And so everybody's trying to bamboozle him out of his money. Jean Arthur plays a reporter who's trying to ruin him in the papers, but she goes in kind of undercover, so he doesn't know that she's a reporter, and he kind of falls in love with her. And because he's such a good guy, she falls in love with him too towards the end. At first, she's like, doesn't think much about him, but then she's just, awe-inspired by his actual, because in New York, like, nobody's honest and good. And here's this guy who's like, oh, wow, I never met a guy who's honest and like a good person, and all this stuff. And all that. So there's a good romantic comedy aspect there. It's a very funny movie and very good ending. There's a whole trial sequence because he wants to give his money to charity, basically, because he's like, I don't need all this money. I'm just going to give away to people who need it. And so people who are kind of scheming against him, they basically charge him with insanity, and they say, hey, this guy's insane, so he shouldn't be allowed to give his money away, because no sane person would give their money to charity, kind of, or all their money away. And so there's a whole trial to try to figure out if he's sane enough or not. Anyways, which is real fun. And yeah, it's great ending, great character. Really love a lot of Frank Capra's type of morality, feel-good movies like this. But yeah, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. If you haven't seen it, definitely check that one out. Number 3. Number 2, man, number 1, number 2 are so good. It's hard to say which one. These are both high on my 100 favorite movies list. So I can go back and forth, but number 2 right now, I'm putting The Wizard of Oz. Came out in 1939. Obviously, again, a huge year, and one of the biggest movies coming out of that year, and one of the most classic movies of all time. And it's about a girl from Kansas, Dorothy, played by the great Judy Garland. I love this movie ever since I was a kid. Even now, I watch it, and I still absolutely love this movie. I think it's a really good told movie. I think even from 1939, I think the costumes are really good. The sets are really good, even though you can tell it's a set. I like the sets. I like the costumes. The color scheme is really good. They do a really good job there. The songs are really good. I mean, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, one of the greatest songs of all time in movie history. Judy Garland's so good at the lead. And then in the 3, the Lion, Scarecrow, Tin Man, all very funny. Amazing performances there. But yeah, I always loved The Wizard of Oz. And in fact, recently I did a video vlog, travel vlog, where I went to Amigo, Kansas. I went to the Wizard of Oz Museum, and I bought this book there. I haven't read it yet. I need to soon read this, The Making of the Wizard of Oz. So I'll read this at some point, get a little more history of the making of the movie anyway. So, but yeah, big fan of that movie. Number 2, my second favorite movie in the 1930s. Number 1 is, of course, a Frank Capra film, as I've talked about him a lot in this video, and it is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They're starring Jimmy Stewart, and we get Jean Arthur again. Interesting enough, she was in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. When they made this movie, it was going to be a sequel to Mr. Deeds, and it was going to be called Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington. but Gary Cooper, I guess, didn't want to do the movie or something like that. Something fell out. He didn't end up doing it. So they ended up having to change the character to Mr. Smith, and they hired a new actor, Jimmy Stewart. And Jean Arthur comes back, playing the romantic lead again. And it's very interesting because Jimmy Stewart this is about the time he's starting to break out as a big actor in Hollywood. Like I said, he did Another Thin Man. He also did You Can't Take It With You. He played kind of a somewhat smaller role as kind of romantic, though, somewhat of the romantic lead in that one as well. And that was a year before this movie. And he still wasn't a star, I would say, but this was the movie that made him a star. He did this movie. This movie did incredibly well. Nominated for Best Picture. He was nominated for Best Actor. In fact, a lot of people thought he should have won Best Actor for this role. A lot of people thought this was his best role, and I would agree too. It's one of my favorite Jimmy Stewart performances. I mean, my favorite is It's a Wonderful Life is always going to be my favorite Jimmy Stewart role. This is probably my second favorite, and I love this Blu-ray. It's got a lot of cool pictures in it. It's like a little book. Jean Arthur there. Anyways, I love this scene. Anyways, but really good movie. What I love about it is kind of about how corrupt politics is. And 2024, we think, man, politics are so corrupt nowadays. And we've been saying that forever. This came in 1939, and they were talking about corrupt politics back then. So politics have always been corrupt. Washington's always been a corrupt place. Senators are all corrupt people, I think. Even the good ones start out good, and then politics, Washington corrupts them, and a lot of them turn out bad. Even the good ones don't come out unscathed, it seems like. And so you like this movie about Mr. Smith, played by Jimmy Stewart again. A lot like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. He's such a likable guy. He's a Boy Scout, and very honest, just honest to a fault kind of guy. And he comes in, he kind of becomes a senator, and he's really only there to hold place until they can they can vote in a new senator, because the senator at the time died. So he's kind of replacement for the senator. But they think because he's so, young and naive and, green, that they can just manipulate him, and then they'll get someone in there. Because the higher ups, the guys with money, are the ones who are running things. And they basically, tell the senators what to do, and they do whatever the rich guys say, because they get money from the rich people, rich business people. Anyways, that's kind of what it's about. And it's kind of about him fighting corruption in Washington. And it's the famous last scene where he has a filibuster, where he speaks, for as much time as he can. So he's just constantly speaking about the corruption anyways, and no one can do anything until he stops. And so he does it for, a very long time, until word gets out that this whole Senate, this one senator is corrupt. And anyways, not to go too much into the movie, but that's kind of what it comes down to, this whole big filibuster scene. Great scene though. Jimmy Stewart, great performance. Again, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely one you need to check out if you haven't checked out. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Just a really good patriotic, as an American, just a really good patriotic movie. And really, very true to, it's very true to how corrupt politics is. I think they really speak well on that. All the way from 1939. Totally nailed it. Anyways, but yeah, so that's my top 10 favorite movies from 1930s. Feel free to comment what do you think about these movies. What are your favorite movies from the 1930s? Love to read them. Love to chat with anybody about that. And just thank you to anybody who's watching this video. Thank you to anybody who's liking it. And just thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all. Yeah.